All right, so for the collar, I'm gonna start off with a 3mm hook and then my main color of yarn. So that's that dark blue that I'm using for the main color. So you're just gonna start off with a slip knot, just like that, and then put my hook in, and then I'm gonna do 6 chain stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna skip the first stitch, go into the second one, and do 5 just normal single crochets all the way down. So that's 1, that's 2, all right, so here I am with 5 single crochets. So then I'm just gonna chain 1 and turn my work, and then I'm gonna do a back loop, single crochet all the way down. So I'm going into that back loop, doing a single crochet, back single crochet, all right, so here I am with my 5 back loop only single crochets, chaining 1, turning my work, and I'm just gonna do that until I reach the desired length of my collar. I'll put on the screen how many rows I am doing. You can do as many as you want, just make sure it's divisible by 3. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so now we're gonna sew it together. So you can do this kind of however you like to. I'm just gonna show you how I personally do it. So you're gonna line it up so that there's no twists in your collar. And so we're just gonna end up doing 5 slip stitches. So in this side, you're gonna go into the back loop of the single crochet. And on this side, I like to go into these foundation chains. There's 5 of them because there's 5 stitches. So just right in here, and then I'm gonna slip stitch. So again, just back loop, the foundation chain, and that's it. You're just gonna get it the whole way. Okay, before you do anything else, make sure this collar fits over your head. Okay, just put it on, make sure it fits. We all been there, just check, you know? Okay. All right, so for row 2, you're just going all the way around in whatever your main color is again. Just this time, make sure that when you're doing your single crochets, you're making sure you're kind of pulling up a little more than extra with that loop than normal. This kind of acts as like a primer for the main stitch that's done in this sweater. So just make sure you're pulling up a little more than usual. All right, it's time to start row 3. So from now on, you're going to be working the waistcoat stitch. And so just keep that in mind as you're doing this. So the pattern for row 3 is 2 stitches of your main color, 1 stitch of this, whatever your color B is. So let's go into it. So I'm doing waistcoat stitch 1, waistcoat stitch 2, and I'm not closing this one off, right? Just attaching my yarn. I usually just tie it in a knot. You do whatever you want to do. You are fancy, I'm gonna do a magic knot, all that jazz, go for it. I'm just gonna do that, and I'm gonna pull it tight. Okay, and I'm gonna finish this stitch with my color B. So there we go. And then I'm gonna do 1 stitch color B. All right, and then I'm gonna finish that off with, oh my gosh, I keep moving it out of the camera. Okay, and then 1 stitch, trying to avoid my tail. 1 stitch of main color, 1 stitch of main color, and then 1 stitch of whatever your color B is. The first row of this is always the hardest. It takes a little bit of time to get used to this, so just don't give up. Okay, so just repeat this, 2 main color, 1 color B for the rest of the row, and I'll see you in a second. All right, so that was row 3, and now we're gonna do row 4. So row 4 is kind of the same thing, but this time we are doing an increase. So you're gonna do 1 normal stitch with the main color, right? And then an increase. So just like this, we're gonna do 1 and then 2. And then you're gonna switch to your other color. And then just do a normal, switch back. So again, we're doing 1 normal. All right, pretend I did a normal stitch. Pretend I actually did the stitch. And then 2 in here. So 1, 2. And so you're just gonna repeat that. You're gonna do a normal main color, an increase of the main color, and then color B. Normal, increase, color B. And that's row 4. Okay, so now that we're back at the beginning of the row, you're just going to continue to follow the alpha pattern, and then I will meet you back when we're done all the color work. So now we're going to start blocking it. This is super important because you see now it doesn't really lie flat, but we want it to. So the material I'm using is polyester, so I'm going to steam block it. I'm just using like a foam blocking board, T-pins. You can use cardboard and sewing pins if you're balling on a budget, but you can just Google like blocking materials and find these on Amazon. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the collar, and so I'm just going to take some of my pins, and we're going to start in the middle and work our way out. So I'm going to just kind of stick a pin in, and then do the same thing on the other side, and so kind of straight across like so. And I'm just gonna do that all the way around. So this just kind of gives it something to anchor to when we start pulling outwards. So I'm probably gonna put about 12 pins in. I just really want it to have something to stick to. So once I have 12 in, I'll be back. Okay, so all of my 12 collar pins are in. So how I like to do it is kind of go a little bit at a time and steam a little bit at a time instead of just pinning the edges. I like to go a little bit at a time. It just, it really helps not stretch it and making the pins move. So next I'm gonna pin this layer. So what I'm doing is I'm just pulling out a little bit, not too crazy. You can actually go too crazy if you want to. This is kind of like a quick and easy way to make your sweater bigger without actually having to do any work. But I'm just doing the same thing I was doing. I'm going at the edges and then pulling apart from each other, and then I'm just going in between. So I'll show you when I've done this. Okay, so I've pinned this entire part so that it lays flat, and now I'm gonna steam just this part. So I have my steamer, and I'm just kind of going over these areas. I'll probably do this for about 5 minutes, making sure I really get everywhere. So I'll be back when I'm done. So I'm done steaming it. I'm gonna let it cool and dry for maybe like 10 minutes. Okay, so it's cool, and so I'm just gonna do that a little bit farther out in my pinning. So I'm gonna do about halfway through the snowflakes and just put a bunch of pins all around this level. So I'm just stretching it out a little bit further at a time. I'm gonna keep all these pins in still though. So I'm just taking a pin, I'm stretching it out a little bit and putting it right about there. And I'll probably do all around as much as I can. Okay, so now I have all my pins in this half snowflake layer. I'm again just gonna start steaming right around here, okay? So finally I'm gonna do the outer edges. So I'm actually gonna borrow the middle pins to help do the edges, keep the collar ones and keep the ones that we just did. I do have some extra as well, so I'm just gonna pin all the edges, make them as flat as I can. So I'm just taking this middle pin, moving it straight back, just like that. So I'm gonna do that for all of them. All right, so I've pinned all the edges. I'm just gonna take a steamer to it one more time. Kind of steaming the whole thing, but really focusing on the edges, and then I'll be done. All right, I'm just gonna remove the pins now. So I'm gonna start at the edges. And again, I'm just kind of pulling out opposite from each other as I go. That just helps keep it like, I don't know, in a circle. I don't know how to describe it, but it does help. Instead of going around one by one, just kind of pull them out across from each other. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to figure out how long to keep going until you split for the armpit, for the sleeves and the body. So this is one I've already made. The length of the yoke that I made before I split for the armpits was about 10.5 inches. So how I like figured it out is I really just wanted to make sure like it went like pretty well into the armpit, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be all the way down here, just pretty well into the armpit is how I kind of think about it. So the length of this one right now is about 7.5 inches. So I'm just gonna work blue in the round and keep going until I hit about 10.5 inches. I probably won't add any more increases, and I'll show you why. So when I put this on, it's pretty loose, you know what I mean? Like I have plenty of room. I don't think in the next, what is it, like 3 inches that I'm adding, that I'm gonna suddenly make it too tight. And so I'm probably not gonna add any more increases. If your bust is a little bit bigger or your shoulders are and you feel like it's not gonna fit or it's not as oversized as you would like, you can consider adding some increases. I personally would probably add them like at the snowflakes, just so I can like keep track of them, but you do you. And then if you're worried it's not gonna fit like mid-size wise, that's not what we're doing right now. We can fix that problem later when we actually split for the body and armpits. So we're mainly just making sure it's gonna fit the way that we want it to up until like here. So yeah. Sorry, one more thing. I'm probably gonna switch to a 4mm hook. The way that this stitch works gives you a lot of leeway in how big you're making your hook. And having a bigger hook will make it work up faster. So I'm personally gonna switch to a 4 probably. Honestly, depending on the yarn you're using, you might even be able to switch to a 5. Just keep that in mind. When it's working up, you can work up a lot faster. The reason we did this 3mm is because we wanted those tiny little details, right, with the individual V's. But once you're hitting solid color, you will not be able to see it. So try it out, experiment. As long as you're not making a ton of like see-through holes, I would consider moving up a hook size. So now I'm going to show you how to split the body and arms. So I've gone to 10.5 inches in collar to end. And so the way this works is you're going to count how many stitches you have on the bottom row that you've just done. For me, I think my number is 222. It's definitely in the written pattern, but I just don't remember it off the top of my head. And so then what you're gonna do is 30% of your stitches are your front, 20% are an arm, 30% are the back, and 20% are the arm. You might want to change these a little bit if you have like a different body proportion. So if your arms are like proportionally larger than your body, or vice versa. But that's kind of like a standard good to go measurement just for like an average. So I'll show you how to do the math and also how to count where to put your stitch markers. How to do the math. So write down your total number of stitches minus 222. For your arm section, you're gonna do your number times 0.2, and you're just gonna round to whatever number that is. So if it's like above 0.5, round up. If it's below, round down. So mine is 44. And then you're also going to do your body calculation, which is 222 times 0.3, which for me was 67. So to double check that they're right, you're gonna do this plus this times 2, which should equal this. And then you do need one more calculation, which is this number divided by 2. So 67 divided by 2 is 33.5 for this one if you have a decimal round down. So I'm gonna round down to 33. Okay, so that's how you do the math. Now I'm gonna show you how to place the stitch markers. So first you want to figure out where on your sweater you want to be front and center. So I like to have a snowflake right in the middle, and I think I screwed up one or two of the patterns, so that's a great, if you made any mistakes in the color work, you can just hide them in the back, because what is on the back of your sweater is between you and God. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find where I want my center to be and kind of find the stitch that lines up with that. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. And then that number where we divided the body size by 2, that's how many stitches I'm gonna count. So for me, that was 32. So I'm counting 32 stitches and then placing a stitch marker. Okay, so that's gonna be my first stitch marker. And then I'm gonna keep going. This time I'm gonna count my arm length. Okay, place another stitch marker. Then I'm gonna place my body length, place another stitch marker, and then finally my arm length again. I ran out of stitch markers, so I'm just using a piece of yarn. But that's how you do the stitch markers. Let me move this up. So you can see this is the front 30%, 2 arms that are 40%, and then the back. Line your sweater up so that the front is in the front and it's folded in half. So this would be our armhole. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a piece of scrap yarn that is the same yarn as the body of the sweater. and I'm going to take it, make a slip knot, right? And you want this piece of yarn to be pretty long, like probably at least, I don't know, like 20 chains worth, maybe more. So depending on how long you think your underarm is going to be. So I have a slip knot. I'm going to go in to, it doesn't matter which one of these you go into. I'm just going to go into this one. Right, slip stitch. And then I'm going to start chaining. And so how it works is you're going to chain in multiples of 5. So I'm going to start with 5 just to show you what I mean. 4, 5. And then you're going to go into the other stitch. Right, the other stitch marker stitch. And then slip stitch, and like just, you don't have to secure it that hard. But and so once you have kind of 2 armpits, you're going to try it on, and if the 5 stitches or whatever the last one you just did is too small, you're going to increase it by 5, and you're just going to keep increasing this chain by 5 until you have until the top fits the way that you want it to. And so I'll show you what's too small and then what fits for me. So hang on. Is that it's touching my, like the top of my armpit, because of how small the chain is. So even though like circumference wise, all of these measurements would fit with 5 chains in between, like it would fit my body and my arms, it's super uncomfortable because of where the armpit would hit me. So I'm gonna add 5 more and I'll show you how it changes. Okay, so I ended up doing 15 chains because 10 was still too tight. You can kind of see in the side, I have plenty of room. So it's more of a preference for how much actual room you want in the armpit. So now I'm going to show you how to actually do the splitting, right? Because these are just scrap yarn. I'm going to show you how to actually work them in. I've removed the 2 chains that we did. You want to pick your work back up from wherever you left off. There are 2 different options. You can either already be in the front or the back section. Okay, I'm gonna grab that in a second. I happen to be in the back. If you are picking up within a sleeve area, what you're gonna do is you're gonna keep crocheting past the stitch marker, right? When you go over this one, you'll do a single crochet, or a waistcoat stitch in here, and then you're just gonna move your stitch marker into the stitch that you put above it, and then keep crocheting. So you basically just want to make sure that when you're picking up now, you're starting in the front or the back section. It doesn't matter which one. You're in the front or the back section. You are just going to keep crocheting until you hit the first stitch marker, okay? So just keep crocheting until you hit here. So I've reached my stitch marker. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a waistcoat stitch in here, right? And then I'm going to chain whatever number I had. So I'm going to chain 15. Okay. And then I'm going to skip all the rest of this until I'm at my next stitch marker, and I'm going to do a waistcoat stitch into this one. So I've pulled up too tight on it, so this is going to take me a second, but there we go. I'm just going to go in here, waistcoat stitch, and then continue normally. So keep waistcoat stitching until your next stitch marker, right? Once you hit this one, you're going to chain 15, skip the rest, insert back in here, and then I'll meet you back here. So now we have our 2 chains. I just waistcoat stitched into my last stitch marker. At this point, you can get rid of the stitch markers. We don't need them anymore. So now what you're gonna do is waistcoat stitch all the way until you hit the chain, and then I'll tell you how to deal with the chain. Stitch the chain. This is the stitch that anchors the chain. So I'm just gonna do one last waistcoat stitch. And then in each of the chains along here, I'm gonna do a single crochet. It's kind of similar to how we started off, where we had to start with a row of single crochets before we could actually start waistcoat stitching. So I'm just gonna go in each of these chains and do a single crochet. And then you would waistcoat stitch up to here, single crochet in the chain, and then keep waistcoat stitching in the circle. Keep crocheting in the round for the body until you hit about 4 inches before your desired length. Just a note about the bottom of the body, these trees, you want your number of stitches to be divisible by 7 when you reach this point. So right before you start doing the trees, just count your stitches in the whole body section. If it's like off, either increase a few times or decrease a few times just to get your number of rows divisible by 7 before you start doing these. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do the cuffs. So the process for both the sleeve and the body are the same. So you're just going to finish whatever row you're doing and slip stitch into the next stitch, and then chain the length that you want your hem to be, cuff to be. It can be different for the body and the sleeve, obviously. I think I did keep mine the same, but we'll see. I'm just gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 5 stitches on my hook, so that's 4 single crochets plus the chain stitch. So I'm just gonna go back in and single crochet all the way down. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so once you've done that, and you've single crocheted all the way back, you're gonna go into your next stitch. You are just gonna slip stitch into the normal place you insert your hook, like into the V, and you're gonna do that twice. So you're gonna slip stitch twice, just like that, and then you're gonna skip those 2 slip stitches, turn your work, and then start single crocheting back loop only back up the cuff. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So once you've done that, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and then you're just going to keep repeating that process. So you're going to back loop only down the row, 2 slip stitches, and then back loop only back up the row, chain 1, and repeat. And then once you get back here, you're gonna stitch it up the same way we did the collar. So you go into the foundation row here, into a back loop of the finished thing, and just slip stitch up to seal it. So now I'm gonna show you how to do the sleeve. So you would obviously have more body here. Don't worry like that yours isn't an inch long. But I'm just gonna show you how I like to do it. So you're gonna start off in your chain part. It doesn't matter where exactly you are. I'm just gonna kind of insert over here. You can do this any way that you like, any way you like crocheting on the opposite of a chain stitch, kind of. I'll just show you how I like to do it for this specific sweater. So this is like my first row of single crochets, and then these are my first waistcoat stitches. I just like to insert in my first row of single crochets where my first row of waistcoat stitch went. So I like to kind of insert here, if that makes sense. So here's my waistcoat stitch for this stitch. I like to insert here. That's just my preference, but you can do whatever you want. So I'm just gonna slip knot. I'm gonna insert my hook into one of these areas. I'm gonna go in here, and then I'm gonna do a slip stitch. Hello? Thank you. So we're just gonna slip stitch, and then I'm just going to waistcoat stitch all the way around. There is one part special though, so that I'll show you. When we get here, we're actually gonna do a decrease. So I'm on I actually inserted pretty early, but once you reach the last chained row where you like kind of hit the yoke that we did, we're gonna do a decrease. So I'm just gonna go into here like this, but not pull all the way through, and then I'm gonna go into here like that and do a decrease. And then I'm just gonna continue going in a circle with my waistcoat stitches. So grab this one. So you're gonna keep doing that all the way around until you come back to that first where we inserted, so like right here. And you also want to remember to do this decrease here. So go around, do a decrease here. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then when you get back here, stop. Okay, so I'm back at where my slip knot originally went in. So I'm gonna go into the same space, do a single crochet. And now I'm gonna go into my next waistcoat stitch, which is gonna be right here. So I'm going into the next row like that. Okay, and now you're gonna count how many stitches you have in this row. So just count all the way around, because we're gonna start calculating the decreases now. I'm gonna show you how to measure the sleeve length. And so you're just measuring from the bottom of your sweater sleeve down to how long you want the arms to be, including the cuff. So it's kind of hard to do with one person. If you have like someone around who can help, you can do that. I also just kind of put my tape measure in my hairband so that it holds correctly. But for me, this is about 17 inches. Okay, so I'm just gonna explain to you how to do the math for how to decrease. So my sleeve length that I want is 17 inches, and my number of stitches is 60 inches at the top. So the only row we have on the sleeve currently. And then I also measured my wrist width. So this is just right around your wrist. How wide do you want it to be? I want mine to be 7 inches at the wrist. Okay. I also took 2 ratios. So this is a ratio of your actual stitches. So you're just going to measure somewhere on your sweater, right? So you're going to measure rows, right? So how many inches, or how many rows in an inch, how many, you know, some kind of ratio. It doesn't have to be an exact number. Well, it has to be an exact number of stitches, but it doesn't have to be like exactly 2 inches or exactly 1.5 inches or whatever. But you can just see for me, my length one was 1.5 inches, made 8 rows. And then you also do the same thing width-wise. So you kind of come up with a ratio of how many inches are how many stitches. So for me, 2 inches was 7 stitches. But again, you can do 1 inch, you can do 3 inches, you know, it's completely up to you. Okay, once you have those ratios, you're going to calculate the number of stitches at the wrist, because we only have it in inches, we want it in stitches. So we're going to use this ratio. And so you do 7 times 7 divided by 2, which is 25. So that's how many stitches are going to be in 7 inches. And then you also do the same thing for rows. So I want 17 inches. I'm going to use this ratio. So 17 times 8 divided by 1.5 is 90 rows. So then I calculate how many decreases I need to do. So this is going to be the number of stitches at the top of my sleeve right now, minus the number of stitches that I want in total at the wrist. So this was 35 to me. Just to make math easier, I decided to only do 30. That's just a personal preference. So I have 30 decreases in 90 rows. So that means I would do 1 decrease every 90 rows to spread them out evenly. So that's how I figure out how to decrease.